Karibu tena, unaendelea kutazama Citizen Townhall ndani ya Monday Report, tukiwa tunakuletea matangazo haya mubashara kutoka hoteli ya Panari kwenye barabara kuu ya Mombasa Nairobi. Na Phil Mwangi katika mtandao wa Twitter anasema, if they said 70% of Kenyans are facilitated with seeds, fertilizer and proper agricultural training, then we'll be talking about 70% of Kenyans who can feed themselves. Tukirejea hapa, kuna maswali mawili ambayo yalikuwa yameulizwa awali. Nataka tu kumpatia nafasi Madam Nzomo aweze kujibu lile swali kuhusiana na bei duni ya mazao, naye Bwana Kaituko aweze kujibu lile swali kuhusiana na mtaala ambao utasaidia kuendeleza kilimo hususan utekelezaji wake katika taasisi humu nchini. Nzomo, tuanze na wewe.
Asante kwa hilo swali. Na wacha tu niseme kwanza soko tuko kwa msimu ya soko huru, na mara nyingi bei ya vyakula inakuwa determined by market prices. Na kwa mkulima ndio uweze kuwa competitive, kwa sababu bei mara nyingi inategemea ile bei inatawala katika soko. Kwa upande ya mkulima unatakikana uhakikishe ya kwamba umezalisha kwa bei ya chini vile inavyowezekana, na pia uhakikishe ya kwamba kwa upande ya kuzalisha productivity iko juu. So at the end of the day, the price of producing that one unit of that commodity that you want to sell itakuwa chini na itakuwa competitive, ndio weze kupambana na nini, na market forces. Kwa hivyo mara nyingi hakuna uwezo wa kudetermine price, kwa sababu lazima tuangalie vile soko iko. Lakini kwa ile mkulima mwenye anaweza kumaintain high productivity, low cost of production, unakuwa sasa uko na upper hand when it comes to selling your commodities. And that's why we are pushing for innovative, commercially oriented and competitive agriculture. And that is what agribusiness is all about. That is much I would say about pricing. And at the end of the day, we are encouraging farmers to come together so that you can have the bargaining power, and you can also be competitive in the market. When you're able to sell together, it's not like when you're selling alone. Secondly, there was an issue about the youth shifting away from the actual farming to industry. And
how successful are you in convincing them to stay in agribusiness?
In fact, what I want to say is that in the youth in agribusiness strategy, in fact, that is one of the ways that we are looking at farming. Because agriculture is not just about taking a djembe and plowing. It's the value chain approach. And along the value chain, there are so many areas where the youth can actively participate without necessarily going to the farm to farm. Because there is also the challenge of the access to land to farm. So we are looking at those nodes along the value chain where the youth can actively participate. They can even do commodity aggregation, they can do transportation, they can even do value addition. So if they go into industry, they are just doing what we expect them to do. So it is an area that is open to them, and they will still be participating and even helping to do value addition, which is mainly lacking in most of our commodities which we sell in raw form. So it is well and good. In fact, if they participate in the industry value addition, in fact, it will be a very good participation from the youth, from our youth.
Okay.
Yes.
Honorable Kaituko, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I would like to respond to the question that was asked by Nation from Ranga on technical and vocational education training for the youth for purposes of value addition in agriculture. When one of the big four by His Excellency the President is expansion of manufacturing, and the target is 9.2% by 2022. Now, a key enabler to that is technical education. He identified it as a need, and he created a state department called Technical Education in the Ministry of Education. It is headed by there's a PS who is in charge, Kevin Desai. And His Excellency the Deputy President has been championing technical education, and we've been working very closely with members of parliament. I don't know which is your home constituency, so that I can know whether your constituency is a beneficiary. So far, we have covered 228 constituencies in Kenya. We have 62 remaining, because we are still sourcing for funding so that we can cover the remaining 62. We want to encourage the youth because the formal sector can no longer absorb this youth. And secondly, we have also agreed with the Higher Education Loans Board that they will be funding our youth who will be attending the technical and vocational training institutes in various parts of this country. So thank you very much.
Okay, and before Mashirima comes in with another question, Michelle, let me ask you this. You're the odd one out in this group because you don't report to our government, in terms of your designation. And each of the three panelists next to you have spoken very good things about what government is doing at a national level and at a county level as well. But we know that there are gaps on the ground. What would you say are the missing links? You know, when you hear all the good intentions so far, where would you say there are challenges? Because, I mean, 1 Acre Fund would not have as much work as it has right now if everything was fully plugged in. Where do you see as some of the areas for improvement?
I think it's more about creating partnerships, public sector, private sector partnerships, to leverage all our value add, to ensure that there's a holistic approach. So the role of government, Ministry of Agriculture, they provide the policy framework, the regulatory landscape. There's quite a lot of emphasis and interest in high value crops, in large scale farming, which is all very good. What we see is that where we are today is small scale farming. It's subsistence farming.
That should be what we are thinking about.
Not necessarily. We've got our vision. We've got Vision 2030. We've got the Big Four. That's where we're going. But where we are today is subsistence farming. And that's where 1 Acre Fund comes in. So people having food on the table, not going hungry, able to eat nutritiously, becoming more prosperous. And then at that point, we can then see, okay, how do we get them to the next level? And that's where we see ourselves providing our contribution to the agriculture sector in Kenya.
Okay, thank you for that, and just helping us understand a little bit about the different roles there. Mashirima, I can imagine more questions.
Na maswali ni mengi tu, lakini sasa nataka kuwapatia nafasi wakulima kadha wa kadha. Mmoja akiwa anauliza kuhusiana na ule mgao wa fedha kwenye bajeti ya kila mwaka. Justus Monda.
Thank you. First, let me start by appreciating the Radio Citizen for bringing this
Citizen TV
for bringing this important conversation. For a very long time, farming has been set aside like it belongs to some people in the countryside. However, I have two issues. One, budgetary allocation, Bwana PS. Under the Cardiff Malabo Declaration, and we have subscribed to the same as a country, is that the national government allocates at least 10% of its GDP. But in most cases, even through the policy framework existing, like the medium-term investment plans, we find a lot of literature concerning that one. What is really the problem of going deliberate to ensure that it is really done? Number two, to the counties, Mheshimiwa. Let us be very honest to one another. Extension for the last few years, especially at the advent of devolution, has done very poorly. Why are the county governments not finding it necessary to embrace extension? Because agriculture is a devolved function. Sometimes during our interactions with the counties, through what we do, we listen to a lot of stories. You find extension workers, the technical staff, they are actually idle in the offices. Are we really going to address these food issues in this country with the 23 counties now staring at hunger? Thank you.
Asante sana. Wacha sasa nimpatie nafasi Wairimu Kariuki ambaye anawakilisha muungano wa wafugaji wa kuku. Ana swali kuhusiana na sera. Wairimu.
Asante sana. My name is Wairimu Kariuki. I'm the National Chair of Kenya Poultry Farmers Association, and I'm also a board member of Kenya National Farmers Federation, representing commodity organizations. My question is on public-private partnership. If I look at the KSAP and NALIG projects, which are, I think, PS Boga's docket, there is a component on institutional strengthening of producer organizations. But when you get to the ground, you don't find that one happening. I'm saying that as a representative of commodity organizations, because when the counties identify different value chains, in most cases there is a producer organization that is spearheading the organizing farmers in that chain. And I think when the farmers are organized, and I would like to comment on something you have said, that it may not be the government's responsibility to support farmers in federating. Organizing needs resources, and that's why even some other countries give a springboard to their producer organizations to get there. We have said our farmers are very small scale farmers and they need support. They know that, like Michelle has said, they know what they want, but to get there they need to be pushed. I have a second one,
Briefly, please.
Yes, be very quick. We did partner with the ministry, or that time Ministry of Livestock, to develop a national poultry policy, sessional paper number 6 of 2013, and a poultry development bill, Gazette Supplement 197 of 2012. And up to now, these documents are still at the ministry level. I'd like to know what is happening. Thank you.
Asante sana. Wacha tumpatie nafasi sasa Simon Nahasho, naye ni mkulima ambaye anataka kuuliza swali kuhusiana na mabadiliko katika hali ya anga au climate change ukipenda. Simon.
Yes, my name's Simon Nahasho and I'm a farmer from Kiambu, supporting Evers Park. I want to know about how we are dealing with the challenges of global climatic change against food security, so that our farmers or our entire communities should be informed or sensitized on global climatic change, so that they can plant the drought-resistant varieties or the fast-growing varieties, or even the well-doing crops in the country. The second one is we should include our youths on farming or in agriculture right from the childhood, so that our children may inherit the agricultural sector soon after the departure of the old ones. The third one is on macadamia and avocado nuts.
I hope it's the last one, because we want to allow others. Thank you. Go ahead briefly, please.
Yeah. The other one is on macadamia and avocados. Since the crops, the two crops have grown up and brought a lot of cash to the communities, there are a lot of brokers who are trying to to destroy the sector. And I would like to inform the government that it should be having a lot of security, since we have the giant rats as the destroyers of macadamia. We have the two-legged giant rats who are the thieves of the academia.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Asante sana Simon. Wacha tuchukue swali moja lingine kutoka kwa mwanafunzi kabla hatujawapa nafasi wageni wetu waweze kujibu maswali haya. Nyendo Maxwell.
Thank you very much, Mashirima. I'm Nyendo Maxwell, a student with great interest on matters agriculture. Before I pose my question to Bwana Piers and Bwana Kaituk, I would like to laud the efforts of One Acre Fund in terms of providing subsidies and farming methods to farmers. I can attest that the entire Mumias East constituency is fully covered under One Acre Fund programs, and that's laudable. Congratulations and keep it up. My question goes to Bwana Piers and maybe Honorable Kainuk can weigh in. Kaituk. There was a lot of hype and fanfare at the launch of the Galana Kulalu irrigation project, and the project was meant to put Kenya on a food security platform, in that we will get slow on importation of goods that can be produced locally. But years after it has been launched, we are still importing food that Galana Kulalu could be producing maybe to feed the population, and we are producing these foods on an industrial scale, and there's no end in sight in this thing. So my question is, what do Kenyans need to know that are not knowing, in that the project has not picked up years after it has been launched, yet a lot of money, billions of money has been pumped in towards that irrigation the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Nyendo. Wahiga.
Asante sana. Piers, I think we start with you. It's only fair. You seem to have the bulk of the questions. And also, Honorable Kaituko, I think you'll also weigh in on some of them.
I hope I'll remember all of them. We can start with the last one of Galana Kulalo. I think earlier on, I said we have the maize problem, okay? Because we still insist on growing maize in Mombasa. It's okay, you can grow, but you will not reach those levels that you can get in Trans Nzoia, where it's more suitable.
Mm-hmm. So is that what bedeviled this project? I think that's what he wants to know.
I think that's the challenge, because Calro has a suitability map for the whole country, what is suitable where. And I think if we can think about food security as not being maize security, we will address our problems by diversifying the food plate in Kenya, by growing crops where they are most suitable. Mm-hmm. Okay? And we'll be food secure. If you go to Timau, I visited Timau recently, they are farms, they are large-scale farms. They don't irrigate. They receive 300 millimeters of rain annually. They're able to grow wheat, they're able to grow barley, they're able to grow canola, they're able to grow peas for export and also for the domestic market on 300 millimeters of rain. That tells you every part of Kenya can be the food basket. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it's okay to have some of these projects, but for the right value chain, I believe if the suitability maps are looked at properly, the right value chain for that place might not be maize. And
is that on record, or it's your personal thoughts?
It's
because many Kenyans still wonder about that project in particular.
You can look at the Calro suitability maps.
Okay,
that's the record. And I think sometimes part of the challenge with the way we approach our agriculture is just that. So what we have decided is, for every county we'll have a suitability maps under the ASDSP, and we encourage the county government to follow the suitability maps so that we can guide our farmers to the right value chains.
Okay.
And I think that way we'll be able to feed ourselves quite comfortably.
Okay.
Yes.
I think this gentleman also had a couple of interesting questions.
There was a question on macadamia and brokers. Mm-hmm. Farmer organization. If you organize, nobody is going to exploit you. If you are on your own, of course the brokers will exploit you. I think we need to move away from brokers into more contract farming so that you grow for a known market and you grow to sell, not to grow and sell. We have a program in the ministry called SHEP, Smallholder Horticulture Empowerment Program, where we are training farmers to organize themselves and growing with a known market. The bananas farmers have sort of benefited from such an arrangement with the Trigger Foods, for example, who off-take their bananas right from the farm, and they have removed this business. And I think this is an area where young companies like young students can create these agri-tech companies to serve as off-takers. The market is always there. The problem is the logistics of getting the commodities from the farm to the market and what happens in between. Right now the system has always been to take it from the farm to Marikiti, then to the Mama Mboga, and in between the farmer loses. But if you take it from the farmer to the Mama Mboga, the way some of these agri-tech companies are doing, or to Europe or to China, then you have solved that problem. And this is a space where young farmers would have a good opportunity. And then on the issue of climate change, this is real. We receive a lot of rain, but it's not predictable. And what that means is that we need to shift from the predictable pattern that we have to conservation agriculture, where you conserve the water in the soil so that it doesn't matter when it rains. So long as the water is in the soil, you can plant your crop anytime. A lot of the large-scale farmers have moved to conservation agriculture. And in the ministry, we want to really have a major program focusing on conservation agriculture in partnership, of course, with the FAO and other organizations who have developed the tradition. CalRO has also developed the extension work for conservation agriculture. That way you can grow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that way. Honorable Kaituku, how can you add to that? I know there were several questions. I don't know which one you picked up on.
All right, yeah. I think the questions I picked up on were on climate change, because for 6 years of my life, I spent in government before serving as a drought management officer. And for you and I, who have lived in this country for many years, indeed, climate change is here to stay. We see unpredictable weather patterns everywhere. The rainfall that we used to receive in 2 seasons, sometimes you either get it in 1 season or you don't get it at all. Like this year, we are experiencing some drought. That pressure is there. And the beauty with our country now is we have an early warning system, which was developed by the National Drought Management Authority, a parastatal that was established by His Excellency Mwai Kibaki. And part of what the citizens of this country need to do is to adapt to climate change, because it's our reality. In terms of flooding, and this is where I want to agree with the PS, we actually need to, flooding is a risk, but it is also an opportunity if we can harness the waters and have them in reservoirs.
So let me give it a specific angle.
Yes.
This year, the Met Department, or someone within the Met Department, told us that the rains they had predicted, 2 cycles of rain, did not come at the right time.
Yes.
How can a farmer with limited resources adapt to that kind of a scenario, where they now no longer know when it will rain, when it will be dry, and what plant to use? Or PS, you want to?
And that is where conservation agriculture comes in. There's a farmer just here in Machakos Junction, when everybody was crying, waiting for the rain, because he had conserved the water from the short rain in the soil. He planted in February and harvested already in May, even as we were still waiting for the rain. So adaptation means changing the way we farm, and conservation agriculture for a country like ours, which is very vulnerable to this erratic weather situation, is to make sure that we conserve the water.
Conserve the water.
In the soil by changing our farming practices. That is very fundamental. Without that, even, the way we farm with disc plows and so on and so forth, that is one instrument which we also need to retire, so that when you farm with disc plow, you create a hard pan. So when the water comes, it washes the soil and it goes away. It doesn't remain on the farm.
Okay.
So the moment the sun comes up, everything dries up. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can give you another point. Go ahead.
Yes. I also wanted to add that within government, we have Kenya Climate Smart Agriculture Project, which is funded by the World Bank, and it covers 14 counties. And 8 of them are in the northern parts of this country that are normally affected adversely by the drought. One of the things that that project aims to do is to promote resilient crops, the growth of resilient crops like sorghum and others that can easily do well in those kind of conditions, rather than maize or what requires a lot of water.
Okay.
So that is part of the mandate of that particular project.
Okay.
And I think that is the direction, actually.
That we need to be heading. I want to bring in Honorable Nzomo on this, even as I know we're getting some more questions shortly. There was a question directly to you.
Yes.
County governments, extension officers, the handling has not gone as expected according to his expectation. How would you respond to that?
Yeah, actually, this is not the first time we hear farmers saying that extension officers are never seen.
They disappeared somewhere
And I'd say that
with devolution.
the rain started beating us when the structural adjustments programs of the 90s were introduced by the donor community, where government froze employment. And I think this is what even as county governments we inherited, because since the 90s, extension officers, before that every year you'd have extension officers being employed. So as people retire, they are not being replaced. So it came to a situation where as opposed to having the staff farmer ratio of about 1 staff to 400 farmers, we are now looking at a situation where in some places you're having 1 staff. The staff farmer ratio is 1 to 4,000. So it's not actually practical. And that is why now the model of extension changed to the demand-driven extension. And I think this is what we need to make our farmers understand. It's more of a doctor-patient kind of relationship, so that when the farmer requires the services of an extension officer, he can either go to a county headquarters where you have the agriculture office, a sub-county office, or even a ward agriculture office. And right there you can be able to get the services of an extension officer. But we have also even gone beyond that and even come up with the idea of the model farms, where we set up model farms in strategic places, maybe like in wards, which becomes a center of learning and of excellence for farmers, where they can go together and learn about new technologies, best practices. So we have not moved away from extension entirely. And I would say that even as counties, we are really trying. And counties are employing, but the rate at which we are employing is not commensurate with the number of farmers that we have. So it will take quite a bit of time to get to that. But I can assure you that we are employing slowly by slowly, and we eventually get there. But the extension, the model is demand-driven, actually. And then I also wanted to say something about the... She mentioned something about bringing farmers together.
Okay.
And I want to say that it is not actually entirely a farmers' kind of initiative. And that is why even through the World Bank programs that we are having, like NARIG and KSAP, we are having deliberate efforts to bring common interest groups together and federate them, and even have apex bodies, and even graduate into producer organizations that can actually, aggregate their produce together, develop large volumes, and can link up very easily with the donor community and even other development partners, just by virtue of being together and being able to have planned production and being able to maintain the quality of products that they want to produce. And maybe something on also climate change. People look at climate change in terms of now crop production. And yet, there are so many other enterprises that are not necessarily weather sensitive. Like if farmers can do poultry production. And that's why we are saying we need to diversify and actually redefine what food security is. Mm-hmm. Because you don't need crops to survive. There are other things that they don't experience as much shock as the crops. And that is what, as counties, we are doing. We are looking at what is suitable in a particular area and focusing and putting resources to that particular enterprise in terms of now building adaptation and also resilience to the climate change issues. So let's move away from just thinking it's crops, so that when the weather is not right, it's like we are done. Okay. There are still so many other things we can do.
There are many things we can do. P.S., I can see you, and I'll give you a chance to speak after the break, and Michelle as well. I'll also allow you to weigh in on this discussion. Let me read 2 tweets before I hand over to Mashrima. At Mkulima Young says, Kenya mobilizes resources for development of agriculture, but the greatest challenge is having these resources to reach the ground. Corruption, just like climate change and crop pests, is a major threat to the dream of kicking out hunger by 2030. And I will allow my panelists to weigh in on what role corruption plays in the whole agri-business sort of cycle and the challenges that it poses. While Francis II says, I have seen development organizations such as One Acre Fund, Haifa International, among others, do great work in supporting agriculture, dairy, among other value chains. My question is, how can these efforts be made sustainable through collaboration and not one-offs? And one person here, Captain Sankale, says, we seem to have a problem with good and focused policymakers to propel our food production and to empower our youth to join agribusiness. What more can be done? And those are so many messages here. We won't have time to read all of them, but those are some of the thoughts of those who are watching. 2242 is the SMS line, and the hashtag is Monday Report. Mashwila.
Naye Dr. Benson Kibore kutoka muungano wa madaktari wa mifugo anasema Vihiga County kwa mfano has only 2 serving veterinary doctors serving more than 200,000 livestock, and you expect those small scale farmers to get quality services? Impossible. Moses Opoma naye anasema wakulima wadogo ndio wanalisha hii nchi, ombi langu mpunguze bei za pembejeo. Na kuna swali lingine hapa kutoka kwa Uncle Fred Machoka, anasema kindly ask PS why drip irrigation irrigation equipment still attracts VAT, and yet government pretends to be moving away from rain-fed agriculture. Tunapumzika kidogo, tunarejea hivi punde na majibu kwa maswali haya.